Good evening, everyone. This is new for me. I've never been live on YouTube before, so I'm going to hope that this is working. So I'm going to a little bit of a chat to begin with, and I'm going to watch in the comments box because you can leave comments. I am much more used to doing this on Facebook, so this is new for you, new for me. But this way, those of you who aren't on Facebook can access this, and maybe as well, it just kind of feels, a bit nicer. I don't know. So my name is Karen Wilding. As you can see down there, I am the director of EYMaths, and I am here this evening to talk to you all about number sense in the early years. And the premise of this is we talk about wow bombs in early years maths, and wow bombs are this idea, or EYMaths rather than just early years maths, but wow bombs are this idea when you hear something and you think, do you know, that makes complete sense, but no one's ever said that to me in that way before, or I've never thought about it in that way before. So I can't wait to share those of you tonight. I'm getting some thumbs up in the chat box. Somebody try and write something in, because I'm not quite sure how it works on YouTube, but I'm imagining you're just going to write underneath the video. And there's always a little bit of a delay. But what I would warmly invite you to do to get started is tell me where you're joining me from in the world, because we are such an international group. And if you want to, you can pop on, are you completely new to me? Have you joined my email list recently and you've just heard about this? Maybe somebody told you about it recently, because I've only been advertising this for about 4 days. Maybe you are one of my wonderful impact members who are in my monthly membership and they're like my extended family. We know each other very well. So hello. Oh, it's working really well. I think I can, let me have a look. I'm going to pull somebody on here. Look, there's Tracy saying hi from Whitstable. Let's pull in, let's see, look, Lorraine from Egypt. See, told you we were international. Look how international this is. We've got Beryl all the way from Buxton, very beautiful place in Derbyshire. Blackpool, we've got, look, Anne, I'm not going to do this for much longer, but it's just fun to be able to do it. Anne from Canada, so come on and say hi. And then we will get going, because I have got so much to share with you, and I should be careful, because what I'm giving you is exactly what I would give you for my paid training. And I have to be careful. I don't want to give you too much, because, if I tell you too much, maybe, you'll be an expert and you won't need me anymore. So yeah, keep saying hi, everyone. What I would ask you to do as well is, whenever we do anything with EYMaths, if you put a capital Q if you've got a question. And what I would recommend is, while you're making notes, any questions you've got, jot them down in front of you, because it's really hard for me to keep the flow and keep an eye on the chat box, as you can imagine. But what I will do is invite you to put those questions in towards the end. That will also help me go onto YouTube afterwards and answer any questions that you have asked there. So I can always type them in if we don't have time to do them face to face like this. But I warmly welcome your questions. And as I say, wow bombs particularly, hashtag wow bomb, all one word. All right, so I'm going to get going. It's looking like it's working okay. We've got Susanna. Anybody want to practice their Norwegian there? Susanna's one of my impact members. Oh, fantastic. Loads and loads of people. So I can't see how many people are on, but I can see I've got 29 thumbs up and 1 thumb down. So I'm hoping that's an accident, because that's not a good start, is it? Okay, so let's pop over. Make sure you've got a lovely drink with you. Make sure you've got something to write on and write with. And let's get going, everyone. So I think we've just got lots of hellos, so I'll get started. So this bold statement that I am making is that counting does not make sense to young children. Now, I'm hoping this is going to feel like the first, maybe not a wow bomb yet, but a sense of like, what? Because that is not what anyone is going to tell us. That it doesn't fit in with our experience, because you think that's what young children do. They learn to count. That's what maths mainly is, maybe we think, for young children. That's what learning about number is. And what I'm going to do tonight is challenge that, with really good evidence. So I want you to come away from this webinar tonight not believing what I've said, and not doing it because you know, maybe you've worked with me and you think that I know what I'm talking about, but because you have experienced it yourself and you have had that realization in your mind. So let's get straight on and have a look at, I want to see, make sure my slides are working. See, no, I was going to, do you know, no matter how much you test these things, my computer is not letting me move on. Hang on a second, let's do it in a slightly different way. Okay, hang on a second. You're going to have to give me some thumbs up if this works, because I'm going to do it in a slightly different way because the computer is misbehaving slightly. I will not be, there we go. I'm going to do it like that instead. Just worked out how to chat, says Sally. Woohoo! So somebody, can you give me some thumbs up if you can see that slide all right, everybody? Saying session aims. It's not the slide in the format I wanted to show you it, but it's the same information, so that is fine. So I'll keep going and just see if you put some thumbs up there so I can make sure you can see okay. So the session aims are that I want us to look at what we understand number to be. Now, if you work with me a lot, or even maybe a little bit, your knowledge and your awareness of what number is will have changed dramatically if you're anything about the sort of journey that I've been on. So my aim tonight is to help you notice and realize what you didn't know about number. So those of you who are on the call tonight and you've worked with me a lot, think about where you used to be. Because we need to understand that we've all come from the same place, because we've all come from being taught things in school ourselves, the schemes we use, the training we go on. And of course, we only know what we know until somebody comes along and challenges that. And I'm going to challenge your thinking tonight, not for the sake of it, but because it's going to make such a difference to your children's learning. And that, after all, is why you are here. So thank you for all the thumbs up, everybody. As I say, this isn't quite, I had it in a slightly different format, but this will work just as well. So you should feel almost immediately that I am switching something on your brain that makes you go, oh my goodness, this makes so much sense. Those of you who work with me a lot, you might not learn anything new tonight because you're experts in this already with all the work we've done together. But when we revisit it, we realize how much we've moved on. We realize we're in a different place with our learning. So it is so beneficial. Those of you that are very new to me, if you choose to be on the what we call the 3 to 5 group on Facebook, which is EYMaths 3 to 5 with Karen Wilding, you can go on there and ask as many questions as you wish following this. And not only will you get my help, but you will get help from the other members, particularly my impact members, who are really experienced in this. And they are childminders, they are nursery teachers, they work in private settings, they are reception teachers, they are students, they are university lecturers, they are head teachers. They represent every possible job that is connected to early years children, and they represent every continent on the planet apart from Antarctica. So, and of course, it would be brilliant, wouldn't it, to get someone from there? But you will find someone in that group that can relate to where you are and what you're doing. So the ultimate thing I want to achieve tonight is to even in the, you know, we've got less than an hour together now, but I want you to come away with a different idea of what teaching number sense means. And I want you to know that the journey you're on with me tonight, it's like opening a door to an amazing room or even an amazing house, and we're just peeping through the door today because there's so much in there and so many rooms full of incredible knowledge that I can take you into. So this is the beginning of an amazing journey. So if you are new to me, remember some of these tasks will be different for you, so you might want to hold back a little bit and see what other people say. Okay, so to start this journey, we're going to do something that I do a lot. And I want you to steal this idea and do it with parents and families and team members because it works so well. So you are going to hold this in your hands. And when you're holding it in your hands, I want you to investigate it. I want you to smell and touch and stick your nails in and pull it apart and do whatever you want to do to explore it. And I'd like you to put in the chat box, if you've not done this activity with me before, if you have, maybe, as I say, just watch and listen. Can you put in the chat box what you are discovering? So say I'll pause. There's a little bit of a delay between me talking and the chat box. So as soon as you've got some words to describe what you're discovering, pop them in the chat box there. Oh, Sarah says the thumbs down was an accident. I'm very reassured. Thank you, Sarah. I'm just going to come back on the screen because it's quite nice to make sure I'm interacting a little bit there. So you're holding it in your hands. I've got my hands like this. You're exploring. What are you discovering? Hello, lovely Zofia. She is one of my Impact members. Lovely to have you on. Hello, Katie. So we've got Amy says juiciness. Emma says it's wet inside. Beryl says texture, juicy. So have a look at what other people are saying because it's like we're all kind of talking at the same time, which is great. Mel says what an apple is made up of. So don't ever think this, just come out with those words. You know, early years people are so good at this as well. Juicy, juice, juicy. We've got shape when we describe the shape. Shiny, crunchy, red, mushy, smooth. Okay, sweet, curved. Okay, so keep those coming because what I want to go back and show you now, and I think this is so powerful and I hope you feel the same. Can you see there that that is A-P-P-L-E? That is not a real apple. And if you watch this on the recording later, you'll see that I never mentioned the word apple and I didn't say put a real apple in your hands. What happened is you have taken that word apple and you have used what we call the concept image of it. So instead of looking at the word, you didn't put A-P-P-L-E in your hands and try and smell that. You might have said, oh, it smells like pen. You didn't pull it apart and end up with an A and a P in one hand and a P and an L and an E in the other hand. I hope you're listening to this thinking, well, that's crazy. Of course I didn't. When I showed you that, you imagined a real apple. That's what your brain did. So your brain used this word in English and these wiggly marks, which we know are letters. We've learned as adults to interpret them as letters, and your children are learning to do that. Your brain has not tried to look at the word and analyze that. It has gone straight to your extensive life experience of apples, and it's pictured something that might look a bit like this. It might look something more like this. And of course, if I asked you to turn a green shiny apple in your head into a red apple, you could make it an old apple that's gone wrinkly, could be a cooking apple. You could cut it open. You could talk about the stalk and the seeds. But of course, these are images of the real thing. And what your brain has learned to do is connect. When I say the word apple, when you see the word apple written in a text, you immediately imagine the real thing. You don't try and analyze the words. Okay, so this is so important because when we have a look at number, and there's a lot more I could do with you. I could do the apple activity with you a lot slower, but because of tonight, I'm going to move on to this next part. Can you see there that that is the digit that represents 4? But just by the same reckoning, if we're saying that that isn't apple, it's a representation of apple, then we're really going to have to say the same about this. This is a representation of 4, but it isn't 4. So one of the first things I want to look at tonight is this idea that when we talk about numbers, what we've been taught to think of is the actual digits, the numerals. But it's what those numerals represent is what's important, because you could stare at apple for hours and you're never going to see that it's red and juicy and got pips in it, because of course that isn't the real thing. So tell me in the chat box, does that make sense to you as an idea that if we're going to say that isn't apple, then this isn't 4, it's a representation of 4. The good news is that unlike apple, which if you speak more than one language, you'll know that the word is not apple in another language, and it's not written like that. But of course, what an apple is and can be is the same all over the world. 4, even though there are different numerals used in the world, we now have this Hindu-Arabic system that we all use. It can look like that, can look like that, kind of an open and close 4. We use a universal system. So actually learning about numbers potentially can be easier. So numbers aren't, I'm going to say, mathematically the digits. However, in everyday life, we refer to these digits as numbers, and that's not wrong. But strictly mathematically, what we've got to think about is, what are these numbers representing? So I'm hoping this is your first wow bomb. A wow bomb should be, this makes so much sense, but I just haven't had the space to think like this before. That's what everything that my training is about. So I hope that's what's happening. So you tell me, when you mention 4 around your children, and again, if you've done training with me before, you might want to just watch what everybody else does here. But when you mention 4 around your children, what do they tell you? This won't be applicable to all of you, but many of you. Pop in the chat box what your children will say if you mention 4. Let's have a look, see what comes up. So, and you might want to do it, what day is it? Monday. Do it tomorrow. See what they say. So Danielle says their age. So tell me exactly what they say. You say 4 and they say, and I tried to look for an appropriate picture of a child doing this kind of thing. They're like, I'm 4, I'm 4. Yeah. So you get it. And there's like all these little cartoons you can see. I've seen one with seagulls, and they're all going, I'm 4, I'm 4, I'm 4. And it's just like they're kind of popping up and you're almost like trying to squash them down. So the most important thing, and something I do in a lot more depth on my training, is this idea that 4, is one of the things that numbers can be, is they can be a label for you. Strictly, of course, the 4 or the 3 or the 5, because we're dealing with 3, 4 and 5-year-olds here, it is their age, and therefore it is actually measuring how old they are. But that's not what they're thinking about. They're thinking about, this is another name for me. So maybe this is Mia here, and you say, hi, who are you? And she says, I'm Mia and I'm 4. And she's using it as a label for herself. It's her name. It's another way of her labeling herself. So this is one of the most important ways children perceive numbers. And they'll say things like to you, as their mum or their dad or family member, they'll say, that's my number. And they will notice the number in the lift. They will notice the number on the bus. They will notice the number on the door. And they will notice it everywhere, because basically they're saying, that's like my name. That's the label for me. And again, as I say in the training that I do with people, we go into this in a lot more depth, because that is what your children are bringing with them. And it is so important. Numbers can be used in a different way. I thought this was a really nice picture. I was looking for some cars in order, and I thought, rather than a traffic jam, which is very depressing, numbers can be used. For example, here, the first car, the second car, the third, fourth, and fifth car. So if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's not the label for the car. It's the idea about the order they come in. It's the position. If these two swap places, the yellow Mini would become number 2 and the green car would become number 1. So it's as positional. Yeah. And when we get to 1, 2, 3, the Golf there, I think, oh, maybe it's not a Golf, but the car there, I'm going to get people telling me, oh, it looks like it might be a BMW. Don't write in, people. This car here is not 3 cars, but it is 1, 2, 3 because of its order. And we use words like first, second, third. So children have to experience that, and that's completely different than what's happening here. The number 4 car has nothing in common with I'm 4 and the 4s they're seeing there. So there are posh names for that, which we won't go into in this training, but this is where it gets really funny. So they're lining up and you're going along and you're saying number names, and you say 1, 2, 3, 4, and you point to this little boy here. I hope you can see my cursor. And he says, I'm not 4, I'm 5. And so you've got the idea that you're going along trying to find out how many children there are. And actually, by the time you get to him, you're thinking that's 4 children. He's thinking, I'm not 4 children, because he's only 1 child. And also he's not 4, he's 5. So I'm just going to pause there for a moment and just take that in, what I've said there about what your children are going through. They see numbers as labels for themselves. When we're going along counting them, which we're doing it to find out how many, They are hearing a label, which if they get the wrong label, they will tell you, I'm not 4, I'm 5, which tells you they're seeing it completely differently to you. And also they might even be thinking, if they have got a sense of 4 things, why are you saying 4 when you touch me? Because I'm not 4 things, I'm 1 thing. So again, is that another wow bomb for everybody? So tell me it's that. Let's have a look at what people are saying in the chat box. Yeah, so we've got the posh names for these are nominal is when it's just a label. So when you think about your keypad on the door to school or your phone, that could be letters, it could be numbers, it could be shapes. It doesn't have to be digits. It could be anything, you know, because it's the idea can be replaced by something else. It's just symbolic. Then we've got the idea of positional order and the first, second, and third. And when I talked about the, you know, number 1 car, number 2 car, number 3 car, number 3 was not 3 cars. It was just 1 car in the 3rd position. And then we've got the idea of what we call cardinality, which is actually the idea about the children 1, 2, 3. I've got up to 3 children. So the size of the group is labeled 3 because there are 3 in it. And that's, again, a completely different idea of using number. So what I'm aiming to do here is to say, you know, this stuff is complicated and it's not going to make sense to young children in the way that we think it should too early. So the good thing about being on this version is I can spot my mistakes and correct them. So what I want to focus on now is this idea of cardinality, which is that numbers can be used to find out how many. And this tends to be where we put our emphasis as practitioners. We're getting children at how many of these, and we tend to use counting to achieve this. And we're going to have a little look at why this is a problem. So already we've got that numbers are 3 different things. So that is very confusing for children. However, it is and it isn't, because children live in a world where things contradict themselves constantly, and they're very bright and they work these things out. But if we don't understand what they're experiencing, we can think they're not learning when they are. They're just having to deal with a lot of stuff. So I hope that makes sense to everyone. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to get you to do what I am probably best known for, which is we're going to do some noticing. And again, in all the training I do, every single bit of training I do, be it to do with number or shape or pattern or space or measures, we always start everything and keep everything about noticing. Noticing will turn you or keep you being a very intelligent person all your life, because people who notice things are the people who pay attention to detail. They're the people who make connections. They're the people who slow down and let their brains do what their brains do well. So this is something your children are naturally good at, and there's masses more I can tell you about this. But I want you to have a look at my board here, and I'll try and keep it in focus. I have to say, if I bend things the wrong way, it's because the camera has reversed me, so I do things the wrong way around according to what I can see. So I would like you to have a look at that. Look, see, bending it the wrong way. What do you see and how do you see it? So don't overthink this. I want you to tell me on this board, and there's a lot more we could talk about. You can see me, you can see the board, but just for these counters here, what do you see? And tell me in any way that you would like about what you can see here. I might even, you know, arrange them, like do them like that. I mean, I can move them around. The nice thing about when you do stuff like this as well is if you drop it from a height, which lots of you know I say this, they tend to just fall a lot more randomly. I've got them magnetic, so I have to be a little bit more contrived about it. So let's have a look. So don't forget about the delay. So I'll have just chunter on in between. So 2 groups of 2. 4 purple swirls. Yeah, these would be better if they were plain. It's just magnetic counters are a nightmare to find. So 2 and 2. Okay, and if I asked you, where can you see the 2 and the 2? You might say, well, there's 2 there and there's 2 there. Now imagine if I'd thrown them down in a different way. Maybe this time you might say, oh, there's 3 there and there's 1 there. Can you still see the 2 and the 2 as well, even though the arrangement's changed? There's still 2 there and there's still 2 there. What about if I said 1 and 2 and 1, even though the arrangement doesn't lend itself for you to see them, that way you can still see. Yeah. What about if I space them out a bit more? Maybe we can say 1 and 1 and 1 and 1. So there's lots and lots of ways you can see this. And of course, if I increase the amount, let's just make this, imagine I've dropped these from a height. as it says, it's a lot more random. So, right, okay, tell me on that one. What do you see and how do you see it? And again, don't overthink it. Allow your brain to just say what it sees, not what do you think Karen wants me to say, because Karen just wants you to say whatever you see. So people are saying lots of circles, and that with the children is so important. That's why I say I would always use plain ones. A lot of the time you can't see these. My lighting's really good tonight, so. But that is absolutely great to say that, and then say something else, and then say something else. So allow your brain to notice, and then notice, and then notice, and notice in different ways. So Emma's said, I can see 1 and 2 and 3. So we could now say, if it was our children, say, where do you think Emma might be looking? Where is a 1? Where is a 2? Where is a 3? Now, there's an awful lot children have to learn before they can do what we're doing here. So this isn't a case of me saying start here, but this is really important for what we're looking at tonight. So maybe, and again, you drop it in different ways, but what if I said to you, I can see a 2 and a 2 and a 2? Even though that might not be obvious, can you imagine getting your finger and saying, oh, okay, so there's a 2 there. Well, maybe Karen's looking at like 2 here and 2 here. Or if I said I can see a 1 and a 1 and a 1 and a 1 and a 2, can you see where I'm looking? And maybe, again, if you drop them in different ways, you'll find, for example, like there, you might say, I can see a 3 and a 3, or I can see a 3 and a 2 and a 1. Okay, so this is really, really important with, and again, lots of you are going to be, if you've done a lot of training with me or someone similar to me, you're going to really notice how far you've come when we do these sorts of things. So what we're doing there is something called subitizing. One thing to be aware of is if you look subitizing up online, that second S is going to be a Z sometimes, because the American English is a Z, and it's really worth knowing this when you're looking it up. But subitizing is the brain's natural ability to see amounts. And the first thing we really have to focus on is being able to label an amount with a number name. So I'm going to come just back off the share and show you our counters again. So you and I have learned, if I go keep it more simple, let's go back to 4 counters. So you and I have learned to call that amount 2. And we've learned to call that amount 2, or call it 1 and 1. And we've learned to call that amount 3 and that amount 2. But you can still see that there are more there and fewer there without actually needing a number name for them. And you can see here that this is a different amount. And you can also see that that amount is in here, there and there. And that amount is in here, there and there and there. So we need to really hold on to this when we understand what our youngest children, so those of you working with 2 and 3-year-olds particularly, and children who are non-verbal, or children that we can't communicate with well yet because we haven't got a shared language, they have got this innate ability from birth to be able to do this. So there's lots more to share with you, but what I thought I'd show you here is our ancestors. So if you think about, we all are descendant from nomadic tribes. I'm sorry there's such cute animals here. You'll have to get past that, particularly the vegetarians in the group. But when our ancestors were roaming around nomadically and we were looking for something to eat, you would know that this is there's fewer deer here and more deer here, because you can see the amounts, and you'd also be able to reason that this was the one that was making the difference. And you're going to have a lot of number sense without needing number names. Then we've got the idea here, that was just excuse the pun. You've got here the animals, and here's the representation of the animals. So something that made sense to early humans, who were almost certainly going to be of equal intelligence to humans these days. There's no change in that. But the idea that each deer is represented by one image. So a 1-to-1 correspondence here. And then that led to the idea of tallies, where each of these marks represented the deer. And these marks were a massive jump forward in human evolution, because whatever you were measuring, it could be stones, it could be cooking pots, it could be a different kind of animal. And what you're doing here is an abstract form of capturing the amount. Whereas here, can you see that these are almost certainly deer-like animals? So we've got that one-to-one correspondence. Can you see that it doesn't really make sense to even us as adults to label that with just one digit? Because there are 4 things. It makes a lot more sense to label with what we see with 4 things. So I want you to hold on to the idea that we're talking about adults here, not just children, but this makes a lot more sense to humans. And what you're doing there is subitizing. Can you see when you look at the deer here and the deer here, can you see the 2 and the 2? Can you see the 4 ones? Can you see the 2 and the 1 and the 1? Can you see it in here? Can you see it here? And can you also see how much easier it is to see when we lower the cognitive load? So the cognitive load is how much your brain has to pay attention to. These beautiful deer here, I'll pick something next time that doesn't rhyme. They've got a lot of interesting things for us to look at. When we do it pictorially, we have fewer things to look at. And when we do it in abstract form, our brains can really focus then on the 2 and the 2 and the 1 and the 1 and the 1 and the 1 and so forth. So I hope these, again, are big wow bombs for you, because the very first time you started to subitize was almost certainly with your main carer's face. And their face looking at you with eyes and probably mouth, that sense of 3, the 2 eyes and the mouth, that is something that humans are pre-programmed to look for, because it's the thing that's going to keep you alive. And baby humans, just like baby animals, are incredibly good at noticing a face that if they recognize, they don't react the same way to all faces. So you can see here, and this stuff is really powerful. Now, what's important to recognize is that, so you can look this up as well as say, look up subitizing with a Z as well. It comes from subito in Italian, which is originally Latin, meaning to arrive suddenly. So it's this brain's ability to do this. And there's lots more to tell you, but not tonight. But we can recognize amounts without labels. Once we start having labels, we can do what we've been doing tonight. But counting is a human invention. Counting is something that humans have created, and the number system, to make sense of the world. And the number system isn't counting. It's counting uses the number system, and subitizing uses the number system, but it is a human creation. And of course, we've been through many times all over the world through history where we've used other number systems. The Mayans, the Egyptians, well known, and here is the Roman system here. So humans have been playing around with this. How do I make sense? How do I move from representing everything with one symbol to moving through to an idea that I can represent with the 5 here, the V. I can represent 5 things with one symbol and 6 things with 2 symbols. And this takes a very big jump in understanding to accept this. So I hope, again, this is a wow bomb for you, for your maths, to think, oh my goodness, the idea of representing multiple things with one symbol doesn't make sense. It's something you have to learn. So you have to have the sense first before we start throwing labels at things. So tell me in the chat box, is this making sense to you? I will pause and have a little drink here and before we move on, and just tell me, is this, I'm hoping that this is like you're thinking, I'm glad there's a recording because I really just want to watch this and pause it and think about it, because I have done this stuff for years and I still, you can tell, it just gets me so excited because we're not doing what I'm talking about here. And when we do, the difference it will make to you is phenomenal. And then when you change the way you think about things, you will automatically teach differently. Whether you are watching this as an interested parent, whether you're watching this as a practitioner, it doesn't matter. The children all over the world need the same thing. Yeah, and we know different children will develop at different rates. Great. All right, so keep talking to me, everybody, and let's have a look then at the next bit. So I'm going to focus in now on counting, and I'm going to focus in on 2 kinds of counting. And this has been such a wow bomb for me. It's taken me a very long time to realize this. But subitizing is starting from birth, like I've said, and it's building up. And there's a lot to teach you about that if you want to know more, which we'll only do some of it tonight, of course. Remember, there's a whole house of information and then we're just peeping through the door. But I've been wondering about Is there a way counting starts from birth as well? And I definitely know, and I'm going to show this to you in a little while, but I definitely know it's not counting to find out how many that starts from birth, because like I've shown you a little bit already, it's just far too complex. But we have got what we might call counting for ordinality. And counting for ordinality is this idea of understanding that numbers come in order. And you think about all the languages that you might speak and other people around you might speak, the idea that if we're counting in ones in English, when we've said one, we say two, then we say three, then we say four. And if you had digits and you had some missing, and we had a digit one, digit two, digit three, digit five, you'd be like, oh, the four's missing. That's not about how many, that is the rules of order. And it's a really important part of understanding number, because it's the number names and it's the rules of a system of order, which is really important. Whereas counting for cardinality is using number to find out how many. So let me know in the chat box, does that make sense to you to separate these two? Because I am now as sure as I could be that what we need to be doing with our babies, 1, 2, 3, 4-year-olds, hard to generalize, but let's say that for the moment, is you are going to be working so hard to build their subitizing skills, but also their counting for ordinality skills. And what I'm going to show you a little bit of tonight is how, when those two things come together, you will then make sense of counting for cardinality. So your children may be the first children ever who really, really do understand why counting works. So again, I hope that's exciting, and I hope there's a sense of like, I think I get this, but maybe I need more information. So counting for ordinality, what does that involve? What do we need to be doing loads more of? And again, there's lots of ways I can help you with this, everybody. So here's an example. And one of the members today, Emma, on the 3 to 5 group, she said, anybody got any ideas for warm-up maths in her setting? And I said, well, tell me what it is you're trying to achieve. Because a conversation for another time for us to have is, don't just choose activities for maths. Don't go searching the internet. Don't just pull stuff out of schemes, and because you're focusing on the what, not the why. If you want to eat a healthy diet, just picking up fruit and vegetables isn't enough. You've got to understand what those foods do for your body. And when you understand what those foods do for your body, you make informed choices. You start with the why. What is it you're aiming to achieve? And therefore, what will help you achieve that? So with Emma, I said to her, what is it you want to, what's the skill you want these children to learn and practice? And she said, counting forwards and backwards. So then I'd said, well, counting for ordinality or counting for cardinality? And she said ordinality. So this was then my answer, was the best way to teach children numbered names, as in the digit names, and recognizing those digits and saying them in order, is through songs and action rhymes and stories that have lovely counting sequences in them. But I want you to think of those counting sequences as meaning much more to the children as an order rather than how many. And you may need a bit of time to think about this, but you also say these numbers in order when you're walking. So a lot of parents, when they're climbing the stairs with their children, will say number names. We kind of think about it as an adult, maybe about how many stairs we've climbed, but the child thinks about each stair having a name. So it's more nominal and ordinal for the child, and it's a great thing to do. You might be talking about, let's do this many steps. And I want us to separate in our mind that what the child is experiencing is the idea of giving each step a number name in order with a word. And these things are really important, but what they're not understanding is that that last number we say represents all of those steps they've taken so far. I hope everybody can see that would be an incredibly difficult thing for them to do. And that's something we're going to have a look at in this session about how we can do that. So when you sing things like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, once I caught a fish alive, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, then I let it go again, you're using numbers for ordinality. You're counting for ordinality. And I would love everyone to be doing this multiple times a day with their children. It is hugely enjoyable. It gets their bodies moving. it engages children, it develops their speech and language and listening skills, it develops their sense of being together. It is so easy to do if you're a parent, and it is massively beneficial for mathematics. So again, there's ways that I can help you make this happen even more easily. And I put a post on the group today to ask you to share your favorite rhymes and songs book. I'm just going to show you. This one's one of mine. And if you've been around a really long time, like I have, this one used to have a little puffin on a boat on the sea. But this is great. And if you are a younger teacher or a teacher who's grown up in a different culture, and some of these in here, you might think, oh, is there a tune? And I don't know what the tune is. And there is some music here. Just go onto YouTube and type it in, and you will hear someone singing it, and you can learn it or you can revisit it. So there's no reason at all for you to think, oh, maybe it's older generations might know certain tunes you don't. You can go and find it really easily. All right, so here's the permission and the encouragement for you to do songs and rhymes and actionings, because the learning and the experience is wonderful, but it's brilliant for mathematics. Okay. So Amy says, right, the name of the Facebook group, Amy, I was going to show it, but I won't in the middle of the presentation, but it is called EYMaths 3 to 5, 3-5 with Karen Wilding. Maybe one of my impact members that is on now, could you pop a link into the chat box, please? Because they are wonderful for doing that, my brilliant impact members. Great. So Tim's saying my children love number songs, and Sue saying, washing hands. So the thing I want you to take away here, everyone, is if I go back a little bit, can you see that what we're doing here is doing number names in order, but it isn't counting to say the total number, but it's just as valuable, but I want us to separate in our mind what we know it is, because I think a lot of us think, certainly I did, that we're doing it to find out how many. And that is a very different skill and a very difficult skill, which is what we're going to come to next. So we've had a look at ordinality, little wiggly fish there. So now I want to look at counting for cardinality. Counting for cardinality is finding out how many. So the how manyness of a number is the quantity that the number represents. So if I go back to the digit, which we know is the representation, this 4 could be I'm 4. That's nominal. That's a label for me. This 4 could be car number 4 that comes before car number 5 and after car number 3, and it's positional. But this 4 could be 4 things. And that is what cardinality is. It's just a posh name for saying 4 things. So that's what we've got to look at here. And it's that knowledge that numbers can represent groups of things which you need to learn to add, subtract, multiply, divide, use fractions, use percentages, all these things that much older children have to learn to do. You are giving them the foundation of this. When you have the right tools in your toolbox, it is not about giving them stuff that's about early years. You are giving them the things that they're going to need for life. You are so unbelievably important in this. And I think people quite rightly talk about early years practitioners as being very important, but we need the right knowledge, everyone. And having the right attitude is wonderful, but it's attitude, when we combine that with the right tools and knowledge. And I know I did not have the right tools. I had the right attitude, the right intelligence, the right ability, but until I knew what I didn't know, then that's when things started to change. So what I want to have a look at here is counting for cardinality involves a lot, and it is blooming difficult, everybody. So what I think we'll do here is we'll come on off the, let's come off the share, and I'll do another little bit of a demonstration here, because this is powerful stuff, really powerful stuff. And those impact members that have been with me the longest, I honestly think out of everything we do, this is the one where we go, this blows our mind every time. But it's really simple as well. So if we look at what we had here before, okay, we were looking, weren't we, at what could we see and how did we see it? So kind of hold on to that learning that we did. So maybe if I do this and that one there, and then we might say, oh, let's add, let's put another one here, and let's put another one, and let's put another one. Now, we've been talking to children like this forever saying, there's another one, there's another one. Maybe it's when they're 2 and they're eating something and they like the strawberries and we say, do you want another one? You know, we're doing that. So we are referring to all of these as one. Yeah, we just did that. And before, we were saying, for example, oh, I can see a 2 here and I can see a 2 here. I can see a 2 and a 1 and a 1. And of course, depending on what you know and depending on how they're arranged, you might be talking about this amount over here and this amount here. So there's a 3 there and a 1 there. There's a 2 and a 1 and a 1. If I increase it again, obviously, if there's more things we could look at. So here, I've got a 3 and a 1 and a 1 and a 1, a 3 and a 2 and a 1, a 3 and a 3, a 2 and a 2 and a 2. And this is the fundamental thing of daily practice with subitizing, which again, I'm not going to go into in this training, but I think I might be called the subitizing queen for good reason. Go on about it a lot, don't I? So what I want to look at here is if I don't have, well, you can't not have subitizing in your toolbox because you're born with it. But if you ignore a tool in your toolbox because you didn't know you had it and the adults around you never talk about it, it's gonna kind of get dusty and rusty and just sit in your toolbox unused. And what's been happening forever is we have been, because we didn't know, because it was done to us, we've only been sharpening their counting tool. So with most children, they have got a subitizing tool, but then as soon as we start actively teaching them, usually around about 4 and 5, that subitizing tool gets forgotten about. So they only end up with one tool called counting. And this is what it looks like. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that one was 1, that one was 2, that one was 3, and that one was 4. So the first thing you notice there is, even though we might say, well, here's another 1, I just called that 1. And then when I count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm now calling that one 5. If I count them the other way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 1 stayed as a 1, but that one over there became a 5. And this is before we get to the really tricky bit. So if you think this bit's hard. Before, you told me that you could see a 2 and a 2 in this amount, so it doesn't matter how they're arranged. But if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, put in the chat box how many 2s. If all I'm using is counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, how many 2s? And of course, as I say, I'm going to carry on because I know there's a delay in the chat box, but there's 1, 2, and it's there. The whole idea that this is called 2 and this is called 2, and it doesn't matter where you get your 2s from, you could get them from there and from there, is completely lost on you. Also, there's a few other things here that are really important. You've had to learn your number names in order. If you miss one out, 1, 2, 4, 5, you will get to the wrong end number. So we've got that part of counting. If you count things more than once, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which some children do, there's that part of it. I'm not going to go into too many counting principles and things tonight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Your counting has to match the speed at which you're touching things as well. But the one I want to focus on tonight is this. And get ready to type, because this is a question coming up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, a child that can do that knows the number names in order, has one-to-one correspondence. They're counting at the right speed according to that one-to-one correspondence. They didn't miss any out. So they're doing tick, 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 virtually everything they need to do to be a counter. 1, 2, 3, 4. You say, how many? What do they do at that stage? This is the bit that is going to reveal to you whether counting makes sense to children or not, or whether they are just going through the motions. So what does the average 4 and 5-year-old who's just secured these skills, 1, 2, 3, 4, you say, how many? What do they do? And it's more what they do than what they say. And I've seen this all my life. I've got 30 odd years in education. So it's coming through. They count them again. So they go 1, 2, 3, 4. And you say, very good counting. But how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. Why are they counting them again? Why are they not saying 4? Because you want them to just say 4. Why would that not make sense to them? Why are they not saying 4? Because this happens all the time. And even children are not doing it anymore. They used to do this. And we've got to realize why they do it. So they say, and again, keep it coming through in the chat box, they don't say 4 because this one is 4. And you've asked about all of them. This one is 1, this one is 2, this one is 3, and this one is 4. So then we start to say to them, there are 4, aren't there? And you get this kind of look on their faces. Maybe we haven't even noticed this because we think, oh, it's just because they can't count yet. They're like, why is she just talking about this one? And then we might say, okay, let's count them in a different way. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh my goodness, just like I said before, the 1 has become a 4. The 2 has become a 3. The 3 has become a 2. And the 4 has become a 1. And that's me having to concentrate to say all of that. You think, oh my goodness, like this totally doesn't make sense. The idea that we're labeling the whole amount. And of course, you and I know we could go 1, 2, 3, 4, because one of the counting principles is order irrelevance. It doesn't matter what order you count things in. But what happens, and I'm afraid it's taken me far too long to realize this, is our poor little kids who are desperately listening and whose main, you might not believe this with their behavior sometimes, but their main mission in life is to please us. Their main mission in life is to be told that they're good and they're clever, because that's what we all felt like most of the time when we were kids. So when we say there's 4, and we'll repeat the last number in the count consistently, so we might be counting our fingers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many? And they want to count them all again. And you go, there's 5, there's 5. They learn that you say the last number in the count. It doesn't mean they understand that that last number represents all of it, because that doesn't make sense. When you said that's 1 and that's 2 and that's 3 and that's 4, then that one is 2. It's not 4. And that one is 3. It's not 4. And also, when you were counting along the line in the classroom and you got to them and said 4, and they said, I'm not 4, I'm 5, or they might have even said their name, you can see they're telling us this doesn't make sense. So I'm going to show you how we can make it make sense in this session, even though it's very short. Anybody having any wow bombs? Anybody going to allow themselves, who hasn't done much work with me yet, to go, pretty much everything I've ever been taught myself, pretty much everything I've ever been taught to do as a parent or a practitioner, I'm now just having that kind of leaking out through my ears going, I can't deny this is making sense. But it's going to leave us with, so what do we do? And that's what I'm going to do next on this session tonight. So we've got, like, Tracy, you're not alone with the head thing there. Yeah. So let's have a look. Right. Your subitizing tool is in your toolbox from birth. When we, in our case, dust it off and start using it, because you have been using it, but not as much as you should have been. And that's a conversation for another time. But when we actively use it with our children, and we know 2, 3 years old, particularly onwards, and my practitioners that work with nursery notice their children's number sense will go beyond the reception children's number sense. And when the children from nursery then move into reception, having had it in nursery as well, we've seen number sense in reception better than the year 6 children. And I'm not joking, because they understand number. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. Okay, we're going to subitize this time. So subitizing will enable you to label that as 1. Let's have another one. So I've called that one 1 and that one 1. Subitizing means you look at the whole amount. That whole amount's called 2. And it's made up of 1 and 1. Let's add another 1. So I've definitely called them all 1. That amount altogether is called 3. And of course, our children have to learn what it's called, but they do know that that amount and that amount are not the same amount, because that's something our ancestors have known for millennia, and that's the brains that were passed down to us, as it were. So this whole amount's called 3, and inside the 3 is a 1 and a 1 and a 1 and a 2 and a 1, and it can use that 2 and a 1 or that 2 and a 1, it doesn't matter. And this one here, add another 1, got a 1 and a 1 and a 1 and a 1, it's called 4. It's a little bit difficult to see like that, so we use things like 5 frames to help us see it. We use some well-known patterns, but please don't go down the road of thinking that subitizing is to do with dice patterns. It's not. It's the idea that when you put something in a pattern, you can much more easily see it. Again, conversation for another time. So you could even start reasoning, for example, that that's 4 because you know there's a 2 and a 2 in 4, because we do what we call move it to prove it. Imagine that, use that pattern because it's easy for you to see. You see the 2 and the 2 in the 4? Move it to prove it. Can you see the 3 and the 1 and the 4? Move it to prove it. This is all the sorts of things we do. So all I've done there, if I go back, is 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I think that sounds like counting to me, but I think the difference is that I understood that every time I added another one, I was labeling the whole amount. And I also think that I now understand when someone says to me, but how many 2s are in that 4? You'd go, well, 2, look, there and there. And if I said, if it was, let's make it a larger number again. How many 2s in 6? If you're only counting, you're going to think there's 1 2 in 6, because when you go 1 2 3 4 5 6, you say 2 once. Or if you see it on a number line, there's only one number 2. Whereas a subitizer would tell you, well, there's 3 2s in 6. And when they see it, for example, in a 10 frame, which is what I do a lot of training on, as many of you know, that's one of the patterns we use. And you can really see where the 2s are in that 6. And of course, you can see the 3s and so forth as well. Can you see there? 1 group of 6, 6 groups of 1, 2 groups of 3, and 3 groups of 2. Your early years children will be able to tell you all of that. Now, that is the factors of 6. So when you are in Key Stage 2 and you're talking about factors with your children, which is to do with how a number can be divided equally with no remainders, which is to do with fractions and to do with division, it's the same knowledge. And of course, you can see the multiplication in that as well. So there's so much more we can do. So I'm hoping, again, if you're new to this and new to me, then I used to work right across primary and set into secondary as an advisor. And this is about understanding that all of this maths is the same stuff. It's all connected. So let's have a look then. Here, you can look these up online yourself. Gelman and Gillistel in 1978 looked at counting principles. And there are 5 main principles. And what I'm going to suggest, and I hope what I've done is proven to you, rather than tell you or try and convince you, if you do the activities that I've done there with your colleagues or do it to yourself so you can feel this, you will see that all 5 of those principles can be achieved when you have great subitizing underpinning it. So subitizing is going to make counting make sense. And this, I could not be more excited to be able to share this with you. I have been working on this for a really long time, and it's only really in the last year that all of my thinking has come together in this way. So again, I'm going to give you the recording so you can go back to this, but this is it. It's this making sense of counting. So I'm going to wrap things up by showing you a few different other things to have a look that are related to this. I shared an article on our group, the Facebook group this week, and you can either go to the Facebook group or you can look this up online. So it's Subitizing Through the Years, and it's Valerie Faulkner. You can see at the top here. And this article here, incredibly worthwhile reading, really easy to read, would fit in, it fits so well with what we've talked about tonight. But I want you to have a look at this little bit here. That when students get stuck using counting on strategies to the exclusion of other more sophisticated strategies, we call this living in one's world. Students living here seem to understand numbers as continuous strings of ones. This conceptualization may work at the foundation level, but it does not hold up as numbers get larger and as students move to multiplicative reasoning. So what that is about there is that idea about, if you imagine those 6 counters I showed you, if you only understand that that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you cannot see the 2 3s in there, and you can't see the 4 and the 2, and you can't see the 3 2s and so forth, where is your foundation of what we call multiplicative reasoning going to come from? How are you going to understand that 6 can be split into 3 2s? And those 3 2s later on will be understood as thirds, and 2 thirds will be equal to 4. You cannot calculate, you can't understand that 2 plus 4 equals 6 because there's a 2 and a 4 in 6. You can't understand that 2 thirds of 6 are 4 because thirds of 6 are equal to 2 and 2 of them therefore be equal to 4. So I hope this is the maths that you and I wish we'd had because this stuff makes a difference for life to children. So I'm going to show you one more thing before we stop, but just I'll keep an eye on the chat box, and if you have to go, you're going to have the link to catch up. So Sally says she can't stop subitizing. Honestly, and sorry, some of you will have heard these same stories so many times, but it's just true, so I'll tell you. But my husband and I have been watching something like MasterChef, and he's like all of us, like I was as well, where, you know, if we had some things on a tray, a small amount, I would have been like pointing at them and counting and forgetting where I'd got up to and all sorts, because of course I do understand that the last number stands for the set. But we'll be watching someone like, you know, shelling prawns or something, and the guy on the program will say, and how many prawns have you got left to shell, so and so? And they'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And my husband goes, why did they count? Why didn't they see there's like a 3 and a 2? That's 5. And you think not only is that much easier, but it reinforces your knowledge that 3 plus 2 equals 5, and there's a 3 and a 2 in 5. That's part whole. This is, you know, important stuff. So yeah, once you start subitizing everybody, you can't stop. So I wanted to finish, and you can tell me here, many of you will be using schemes. Depending on where you are in the world, they might vary. And one of the things that many of you are using is the NCETM charts. So you might be working from the NCETM, which is the National Centre for Excellence in Teaching Maths. I've been with the NCETM since they started, probably 20 years ago. So and been a big part of this. Don't work for them, but I'm accredited by them. But they do something called Mastering Number, and a lot of you bring a lot of questions and so forth to me about this. And I did have a big conversation during an Ofsted inspection with someone literally at the end of last week about this. So if you're not familiar with it and you're interested, all you have to do is type in subitize. So just literally type in NCETM early years. But interestingly, the progression document has subitizing down here. And this causes a lot of grief for a lot of my practitioners, because they've seen everything you've seen tonight and they go, hang on a minute, but this is the natural skill that helps children make sense of counting, and counting is here. So what I wanted you to have a look at was, first of all, the NCETM promote the use of Doug Clements and Julia Sarama's work, and they have got a website called Learning Trajectories. That's quite hard for me to say, everyone. Learning Trajectories, it's written here. That's actually my book that's sitting on my desk now. And in their book, and in fact, I'll come off and do this live. So you've got that to look back at. So this is the book version, but they've got the website as well. And in their book, which, as I say, the NCETM, and I've got a bit more to show you as well, will advocate that we use, in this section here at the beginning, which is what I photographed for you, it very clearly shows, I don't know how well you can see this, I've made it bigger on the next page, we've got quantity, number, and subitizing with a Z because it's American, and then we've got verbal and object counting after that. And I've made it a little bit bigger here. So just listen to that. So this is being advocated, and also this is where I learned my subitizing from originally, from Doug Clements. Julia Sarama is his wife. They're a co-team there, but yet the documents they're asking you to use do not match up with that. So that's interesting. So then I wanted to show you here, because I said to someone the other day, I don't just complain about stuff, I actively try and change things, because I've perhaps got a little bit more influence, all I would hope, than I did when I was back in the classroom. But this is on Twitter from 1.5 years ago. And this is a conversation between myself and Debbie Morgan, who is the director of the NCETM, who I know very well and have known in person for a very long time. And I'm basically asking, are the Maths Hubs planning to promote Clements and Sarama's work? And she says, yes, absolutely. And then I ask, are there plans to change the NCETM documents to make them actually match the work that the NCETM are promoting us using? Because like I've showed you here, that does not match that and causes practitioners stress. And also when we know about subitizing, we absolutely know that this makes sense, regardless of who's written it where. We've also got another one here, someone asking about the documentation about Clements and Sarama, and asking again Debbie here, and she's citing the importance of the work, and it is really important and really, really useful. And then the final one I wanted to share was, have a look at this one. This caused lots of people lots of stress in the summer with children learning number bonds. And I've always said the way to learn number bonds meaningfully is to use subitizing for your composition of number, comparison of number, 5 frames, 10 frames, and do it really practically. And here is the NCETM director absolutely actively promoting that. So I thought this was really good hard evidence to back up. There are maybe some misalignment, shall we say, in some of the things that are being shared. And if we know where to go to look, we can perhaps have some easier conversations in school. Because I know many of you are really having to fight your corner, and you shouldn't have to. Even if none of this was written anywhere, all you would need is what we've looked at tonight, is that this works. It makes sense in our heads. So of course it's going to make sense to the children. So I'm going to leave you here with the model of cardinality in number is how many. Now the problem with how many at the moment, and this is where every practitioner who works with me starts, is when you say to your children how many, they reach inside their toolbox and they grab their counting tool. So it's a counting spanner here, or a counting wrench. They have got a subitizing tool as well. So what I changed this word to, this phrase to, this question to, is what do you see? And this is what I'm most well known for. And then we think, or what do we notice? That's even better, because it may not be something you can see. When you change this to what do you notice, we have to give our children, well, they've got this one naturally. We're going to give them this tool as well, and we need to allow them to sharpen them. And then the final question for tonight is, but when do we count and when do we subitize? And this is something my members and I we still spend a huge amount of time talking about. But for tonight, I'm going to give you some answers here and say, when you can see something, for example, might be sheep in the field standing still because they're having a little, a munch. It might be clouds in the sky. It might be prawns that need peeling on the plate. You can notice groups. And when you can combine those groups using your growing skills, your number skills, you do what's called conceptual subitizing. It is much, much more effective and efficient than counting. Even as adults, if someone interrupts you while you're trying to find out how many in counting, you lose count, you miss words out, you lose your place. So subitizing is brilliant for that, and I can teach you a lot more. Whereas if something like, imagine if it was cars passing the window, or you're turning pages, or it sounds, someone's bashing a drum, you could subitize that, but it's really hard. You're much better off using counting, because you're using almost the ordinal nature of counting. And the difference is that when you get to the last number, because you've got subitizing in your toolbox, you know the last number represents the whole group. Because in cardinality, that is what numbers are doing. The last number represents all the other numbers that have gone before. So I've got one more thing to show you, but I'm going to come off the share now and have a look in the toolbox. How has that been for you? That is just over an hour from me. And really, if you wanted to know, I work much wider as well in mathematics. But if you wanted to know what my work on number sense is like, and what I do in EYMaths, and what every single conversation that we have is around, looking at the planning to go with this, looking at the provision, looking at when we do teacher-led, looking at continuous provision and enhanced provision and the resources and where we do it. That's just all connected to everything I've shown you tonight. What I've shown you tonight is the core of everything that I do on number sense. So if this is making sense to you and you are peeping through this door and you are thinking, I want to go in this house, I don't want to stay out here anymore, then you are in the right place. Okay, so this is super, super exciting. And it's why I had a message from one of my Impact members today, who's a child manager, and she said, I never, ever want to leave this group, which as far as I'm concerned is absolutely fantastic. I'm going to hold her to that. So have you had lots and lots of wow bombs? Can you pop a wow bomb in the chat box for me? Something, and I'm hoping there's loads, especially if you're new to me, What are you going to walk away from this tonight and say, I just want to tell somebody else about this? Because that is the evidence of a wow bomb. I have changed the way you think. You can't wait to go and try it. And believe me, you cannot break your children when you're learning how to use this. This is something we talk about again a lot in the group. When you know your stuff, you are going to have to learn to do it, which means you're going to trip up a bit, but you're not going to do your children any harm. We're doing them harm at the moment without meaning to, because we don't have the right tools in our toolbox. And once you have them, your brain will be blown within the first conversation you have with the children, not even a day. Brilliant. Love the apple. Fantastic. So what I'm going to leave you with, and I got to be really quick on this because I am going to be strict, is many of you know about this already, but over on my website, in fact, I'll show you if I can get this to work. You're gonna have to tell me in the chat box if you're seeing. I think you are seeing what I'm seeing. This is my actual website. If I go back, that's the home page there. So I'll just show you how I've got in number sense training. Now this ends tonight, everyone. So you don't have to do it, and it will be available beyond today, but I'm making it really special because look, it's only at the moment tonight, you grabbing this course, which will teach you what I've taught you tonight and loads more, and your brain will be well and truly blown forever. So it's the kind of first step with me, doing everything we did tonight, as I say, and more. And I'm doing this, look, £15, but it ends tonight at 10 p.m, which by my reckoning is 1 hour and 19 minutes away. So all you have to do, go on the website, click there. If you don't want to do this, it's not the right time for you, it will be available. Look, it's still going to be available. It's just going to be a little bit more expensive. So there is no rush for you to do something you're not ready to do yet. But if you are ready, it is waiting there for you. Okay. Oh, I nearly clicked us off there. So I am going to go and have my dinner now. So if anybody else has been waiting to have their dinner, I hope it's lovely. Possibly not good eating this late, is it? But I was just too excited. I concentrate much better when I'm slightly hungry. So it is wonderful to have you on, everyone. I will go back. I say I have no idea. I don't know if anybody can see how many people have joined us, because on Facebook it shows us and I can't see. I've got lots of thumbs up, which is lovely. I am here for you on this group. You can ask me questions. The best place to find me, however, and if you haven't got a Facebook community, a Facebook account, use somebody else's. Go on that EYMaths 3 to 5 with Karen Wilding Facebook community, because not only will you get me, you will just get the most amazing group of people who are on the journey with me, those impact members helping you as well. So we are there for you, and it's free. We're there for you whenever you need us. All right. Okay. Lots of people. All right. Brilliant. So yeah, sign up if you want to sign up, and then we can talk about what you're learning on the group, and you can chat to me through that as well. All right, everyone, take care, and yeah, enjoy. I will send everybody the link to the recording afterwards. So it's been brilliant having you with me tonight. Thanks, everybody.